And the National Super Alliance has kicked off the process of finding its flag bearer with a proposal of an 11-member negotiating team to be unveiled today. The committee will be tasked with finding a consensus on a line-up to accommodate all the players. Kennedy Mureithi reports.
The meeting at the Cold Springs Current Boutique Hotel, bringing together 4 party leaders from the main parties in NASA, lasted about 2 hours. Away from the glare of the media, the principals got time to discuss details of a journey they intend to make, their destination being a presidential candidate. It is understood that a committee of 11 is to be unveiled to jumpstart the process. It is to draw representation from ODM, Wiper, Ford Kenya and Amani National Congress. Of the 11, 3 are the CORD Secretariat co-chairs. These are James Orengo of ODM, Johnston Muthama of Wiper, and Dr. Eseli Simiyu of Ford Kenya. The political parties are also supposed to produce 2 other members each to bring the number to 11. Sources say from Wiper there will be Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. and Mombasa Senator Hassan Omar. On Ford Kenya's side, there is Kiminini MP Chris Wamalwa and Kakamega Senator Boni Khalwale. On Amani Congress side, there is representation from the deputy party leader Kipruto Arap Kirwa and the party leader spokesman Kibisu Kabatesi. However, with the propositions from the different political parties, the final list is to be unveiled Tuesday and presided over by the principals. After its unveiling, the negotiating committee will have 2 weeks to come up with a possible lineup that is acceptable to all the partners. Kennedy Mureithi, NTV.
And of course, also that forms the basis of our discussion here today. We look at a raft of issues. Of course, yesterday, Amina losing or missing it by a whisker is also a big story that we'll be exploring today. So how is Kenya losing on that? And also we'll be looking at the party politics and the regional politics here on People and Politics. Allow me to introduce our panelists who are already here in the studio who will take us through that. We have with us Senator Mutahi Kagwe, who is the senator from Nyeri. Also, we do have Senator Kimani Wamatangi. Kimani Wamatangi is a senator from Kiambu. We have with us Mithika Linturi, Member of Parliament from Igembe South. Also, we have with us Haman Munyora, who is a resident analyst here, and also he is a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, and Senator Boni Khalwale, who is a senator from Kakamega. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. All right, looking at the stories we've just done, first of all, let's begin with the close, defeat that, or win, I should say, for Amina Mohamed. She just lost it by a whisker. Did this really come from the left side after all this lobbying, the shuttle diplomacy that we saw, and people debating whether we are spending a good tidy sum of money on this particular deliberation? Were you surprised by this particular outcome? Let me also officially introduce Mutahi Kagwe to this panel. Yeah, he's the first out of the gate. These are locals. Yeah,
thank you.
Good morning.
Very much.
So were you surprised by the outcome?
Yes, I was. I was a bit surprised because I think that sufficient preparation had been made.
Yes.
I think that Amina had campaigned substantially.
Yes.
She did very well, even though she eventually lost the battle. I think that there were many issues of continental and geopolitical issues that played into her defeat. As you saw for yourself, the Francophone countries were determined that they are going to keep the seat this time round. And I think you can understand that because for a long time it was in South Africa. And I think that for them, East Africa would not have been a good enough change. And in a way, that's why she lost. Obviously, we are very disappointed that our neighbors at some point also abandoned us. But I think that it was good for Kenya. You know, whichever way it went, even if she lost, it is still lifted the name of this country. And I think that she has got a bright future up ahead.
A bright future up ahead. But Boni Khalwale, this was a low blow also, as Mutahi alludes to, that our neighboring countries, they didn't support us. Is there any bugbears and fears about, Kenya as a nation rising? We are a developing country, as it were, and these other countries, they're underdeveloped.
I strongly believe in the role of spiritual power in the outcome of local and international events.
Spiritual powers.
Yes. The fact that President Uhuru and his deputy pushed so hard for Amina, I think the gods were offended to the extent that they were doing this using public funds, when at the same time those funds were needed to address the hunger in the country, when at the same time 68 Ugandan soldiers were lying dead, and therefore the gods must have been offended.
But this is
but
they had begun this process before the looming droughts, hit home.
I was going on.
Okay.
The doctors were also not in the hospitals, so the spirits of the dead and the spirits of the gods were completely unhappy with that misuse of public funds, which is rumored to be to the extent of 4.5 billion shillings. But on the issue of Uganda and Tanzania, I don't know why up to now it has not occurred to Jubilee that the president of Uganda and the president of Tanzania are not with the President Uhuru. If they were, today the standard gauge rail line would be going to Kampala all the way to Kigali and Burundi. Instead, they are choosing the route of transiting their goods through Dar es Salaam all the way to Kigali, Burundi, and Kampala. It is high time that the president realized that he's not with these guys locally.
All right. But we had the cabinet secretary, who is the chair of that committee of the cabinet secretaries, Matiang'i, saying that this was a low budget. So hearing what the low budget shuttle diplomacy that Amina or the government was lobbying for Amina Mohamed to become the chair of the commission. So hearing that, what 4.5 billion shillings was spent?
Yes,
so
you see, in a country where a saloonist becomes a billionaire, when you talk about 4.5 billion, it is a very low budget. To them, it is pocket change, Mr. Dibar.
Right. To you, Professor, is it pocket change? 4.5 billion shillings.
Well, it depends. You have devalued your money in the manner in which you steal left, right, that a billion has become nothing. And you see these people who steal, they're actually stupid. Because the way we handle our currency, in itself, without going into the economic details, the details of economy, devalues your money. It loses value. Because if people walk with money in their boots, the boots of their car, then you devalue your own money. So 4.5 could be loose change. Having said that, I think I must say, as a country, we have lost, we have conceded, and we have accepted. We hope Amina will go through the stages of grief and recover quickly. But sometimes, looking at social media, then you can understand. What came out yesterday, that overwhelming and not surprising, a frightening number of Kenyans were celebrating her loss. And this tells you something. And I think it has something to do with the amount of money that was spent. When you say they didn't spend, it was low budget, you don't walk to Nigeria. You don't take a matatu to Zambia to go and campaign.
Or boda boda.
Or boda boda or tuk-tuk. You board a plane. And these things cost money, And Kenyans and you see, Kenyans are not fools. They know you are spending money. So when you talk of low budget, they can't understand what you're talking about. Low budget, and you've gone all of Africa, not just the deputy president. Ministers were assigned in teams to travel all of Africa, campaigning and lobbying. It's a good thing to profile the country. But at the same time, it should be at a reasonable cost to the country. Because at the end of the day, what does it really mean to be this chair?
All right. What does it really mean to be this chair?
It doesn't mean much.
It doesn't mean much? Do you hold with his view? It doesn't mean much? Mythical Inturi?
Yeah, and about me, I may have a different opinion.
Yes.
And from what I've gathered from interested Kenyans who are really following up the EU politics, and surprising enough, these people have a story which is completely different from what my colleagues have just talked about. And I was almost persuaded to believe, or probably this could be the cause of loss of Amina. And the reasoning is that, Kenya, the position are having quite some good influence within Africa. And Kenya having threatened to get out of the ICC for a number of times, I think twice or so, many of these friends were so afraid that with the assumption of Amina to that position, then they may have quite some influence over the African countries, and probably with the course of time, then they may be able to realize this dream. So I think, you know, politics at times there's quite some big percentage of propaganda, and depending how it is handled, people may be influenced by even things that are not real issues. So probably there is a constituency of some people in this country that believe that with that kind of push by government and with the threats that we've had with the withdrawal, that probably would have played to the disadvantage of Amina.
All right, let's hear from Senator Kimani Wamatangi.
Yeah, thank you. You know, first, I would have expected that the bullfighter, you know, Amina is from Kakamega.
From Amalemba.
maybe the bullfighter forgot. Maybe the bullfighter forgot that. I mean, I would have expected.
When she was at Township Primary School, I was at Malinya, and her younger brother Jibril was my classmate. We were with him in
So
high school.
that's what I'm saying.
There are people I know.
I would have expected that the bullfighter would have been very supportive. But Dibala, I first want to say that Amina has been a woman who has had several accomplishments. One, as a woman. Two, as a Kenyan, and diligently represented the image of this country. Remember, she is represented in the United Nations as a permanent representative. Also, she's been a PS, she's been a CS. So she's a woman of many fasts. And I think just the mere fact that she had the audacity to aim for that slot and go for it and fight for it, to me means a lot. It means a lot. I think the politics around it, and my colleague here, Senator Senator Motahi, has spoken of it. Of course, even before we went to the election, you could feel the undercurrent. There was a lot of jostling. You know, the pull between the North African countries and the SADC region. The fact that those few countries, especially, you saw the politics that came out when Morocco came in, and their demand that their long for. You know, the issue of Sahrawi and so on. There were so many factors at play.
Yes.
That definitely would have influenced this outcome. I think at the end of the day, Amina has made a big stride forward. You know what they say in life is that make that step forward, and if you fall, make sure you fall forward or fall forward. It's still a step forward. I think she's done well. She's done well, and she's not even think of regretting having done that. You know, as far as the talk about spending 4.5 billion is concerned, I think and Halwale said that it is rumored, and of course, you know, that's what it is. It's a rumor. It's a rumor. There's no 4.5 billion that has been spent.
How much was it?
And let me say this, Dibal. You know, when we have
the low figure budget,
when we have one of our own, and we must learn to see ourselves as Kenyans.
Yes.
In the first place, because when we have a Kenyan in the forefront fighting for a position, and then we choose to play local politics of Jubilee and who can we, and I say nothing wrong in the president or the deputy president and anybody else in this country.
Thank you.
Having fronted and fought for her success.
Okay,
It would have
let's
been
hear
success
from
for the country.
Mutai.
Everybody, first and foremost, every country fights for international positions.
Yes.
And Kenya has been very poor at fighting for international positions. This is the first time we are seeing them taking a step forward to take serious international positions that have got impact in their own countries. Now, every country spends some money to get that done. It is not either Amina gets this position or we buy food for the hungry. It's both. We get the position and we buy food for the hungry. And having said that, the guy who won, Musa Muhammad, he traveled around the African countries as well. And he didn't take a camel. or walk. He took a plane just like anybody else was doing.
Do you think?
So let us not confuse issues. Let's not confuse the issues.
Okay.
We want to fight for international positions, and they cost some money. It's prestige, it's positions that put Kenya high, and ultimately have impact as far as the economic well-being of our country is concerned.
All right, just a moment. Do you think also maybe the executive really overplayed their hands with their lobbying and the subtle diplomacy?
No, not at all.
They were overt with it.
Not
were
at
they?
all. It is standard procedure that when your candidate has been put out there in the AU, it is standard procedure that the chief executive of the country must support that candidate and must go there to lobby amongst his peers. You see, President Museveni, President Kikwete, and other presidents from elsewhere, they are not Amina's peers. The person who is the peer is President Uhuru. So it is right and fair that Uhuru should go there to support Uhuru's candidate, Amina's candidate, and it happens every time, everywhere else.
All right, don't you think also that the East African community not really supporting us in this regard? And of course, we are bound to benefit, all of us, if Amina will have actually garnered this particular position. Does it also send wrong signals to us as a country that, of course, all is not well with our neighbors? May
I correct the perception that I'm against Amina as an individual? There is nothing wrong with Amina. We would have loved Amina to take the job. But I was very clear that it was the gods. The gods were angry that how could this be our priority when there were far more demanding national issues locally. Yes. And just to make it clear, Senator Mutahi is misleading the country. Amina is not the first Kenyan to go for an international job.
Indeed.
Dr. Mukhisa Kitui, the Secretary General of UN DACTAD, has such a reputable job, but President Kibaki never expanded this kind of energy when Kitui went for the job. In fact, they met only with Ban Ki-moon once in Nigeria, and he told him our candidate will be Mukhisa Kitui. And Mukhisa Kitui went there with these great angels, good ones, like these ones of Amina, and he got the job. So, what then should ask ourselves, how come the presidents of Uganda and Tanzania, who know us very well, went and told the other African presidents that this is the wrong? It is because they know the agenda was unclear of the president pushing. And to my mind, there was an attempt for Kenya to capture the African Union for their own political agenda.
What
will
be that agenda?
Yes, the president of Kenya is on record. In fact, some of the meetings were being organized by Amina, is on record as having attempted to use the AU to sort out his case at the ICC. He went even as far as lobbying for the AU to en masse pull out of ICC. So other African presidents who would like a stable, peaceful Africa would not want to support that kind of president who has already demonstrated that kind of agenda.
Let me intervene. Before you come to you. Let's hear from Prof. Just a moment, sir. Just a moment. No.
To capture.
I'm sorry to butt in. Let's hear from Professor. Let's go sequentially. Professor.
I think it's good to get this thing right. First, I'm happy that Khalwale has said he has nothing against Amina. And another fact is that Amina is very qualified. In fact, overqualified for this small job. And Kenyans, number 3, Kenyans will be happy if Amina got this job. We want international presence, like Senator Mutahi Kagwe says. What, however, is not in place is not correct. And Mutahi Kagwe, you see, the problem here is not that we can't spend money. We can spend a lot even more than that. But good governments read the mood of their people when they are doing certain things. I doubt that a president of a country will leave to go and campaign for their candidate in Addis Ababa when what had happened in Somalia to our soldiers was still fresh.
Yes.
Number two, he would come. Presidents suspend their trips abroad to come and attend to matters of national importance, such as disasters, even much smaller than what happened to us. Number two, when the doctors are on strike, lecturers are on strike, Nairobi people have no water, Kenyans are dying of hunger, you cannot be justified. It doesn't have to be the gods, but you cannot be justified as a serious government to spend money campaigning for opposition, especially if that person is qualified. Africans will just vote for them. But finally, let me tell you why we lost. Other than the Francophone countries, there was also the feeling in Africa that Kenya represents the worst that is Africa, the worst side of Africa. So that if you look at the countries that supported us, go and look at them quietly. When the names come out, the list of how people voted, you'll find we are supported by the very worst that Africa has today.
All right.
And this is dangerous.
What's the criteria for best?
Just a moment. Can we pick up Mythical Inturi from the fact that, or from the perception that Boni Khalole is raising? We know, and previously we've seen, there was a special sitting also of the African Union, to lobby for, us and the ICC. We remember that when President Uhuru Kenyatta went to Ethiopia to actually lobby the African states to support him in regard to ICC. Could that also had been a contributing factor, right, to the loss of Amina today? That this perception we're talking about today, it is a bit skewed, that we want to use this position for our own gain?
I think from my opening remarks, I shared the sentiments that from other people. And in fact, I said I was speaking for Kenyans that were following up the AU politics. And indeed, one of the reasons were that they are quite apprehensive, or the fear that the other nations may have is that since Kenya has been very strong, and Kenya through its parliament has threatened getting out of the ICC for quite some time, and also looking at, for example, the meeting that was in Addis Ababa, where our members went really to lobby and the African Union to really support their case. I really supported that personally. This I must say and confess. I was also in Addis Ababa at that particular time. And now that history is what may have clouded all this, because people are not sure. But that is me.
People are not sure of what? And clouded what?
No, the clouded, the few votes that we lost. Politics can be, or the voting patterns are influenced by propaganda or many other things. And for those that may have that fear, probably you may find that they may shift supporting before voting at that particular time. But I personally know that Kenya put in a serious spirited fight. I am saddened that Amina lost, because I think, as Professor said, we would have earned the best. The best candidate. We earned the best candidate, and probably would have been the best performer.
Thank you.
That anything else notwithstanding.
All right, we don't need to belabor the point. She's lost. But of course, as we are closing our closing remarks, Mutahi Kagwe, you think it was our undoing as a country that she lost? It is not because of a candidature. She's well able and she's qualified.
I think Amina was a fantastic candidate, and I think that she's the best AU secretary that we never had, so to speak. I don't think that all is lost yet. I think that going forward, Amina has still got many chances of doing exactly the same thing. And I think that first we should be grateful that she did as well as she did. I don't think Kenya did as well as it could. And I think that it is basically she's a victim of other geopolitical issues.
Geopolitical issues? That is serious.
It is what it is. You are talking about the divisions within the continent. I think, the interests of the nations that exist, which overrode, the friendliness that Kenya has with some of the countries.
All right.
And I think that it is important for us to keep in check the concept that jealousies also exist. Jealousies are there among nations as well. Jealousies are there within nations. And I think that some of the nations that voted against Amina, may very well have been led by certain jealousies in them, in the fact that Kenya may be doing too much. Here we are, we had President Obama here, we had the Pope here, we had the WTO here. You know, is it Kenya, 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 Kenya all the time?
All right, so,
and the concept of the PhD syndrome, you know, pull them down. You know, they are going too fast, too much, you know. We want also to look like we belong to Africa. So I am of the view that Kenya did well, and I'm of the view also that we will continue to do so.
all right, so Senator Kimani Matangi, you don't think about the gender issue as well? We had Zuma, who was outgoing, then Amina coming in. Could also that have contributed in any way?
Well, that was also speculated. I mean, on social platforms, that was one of the main issues that also was fronted, amongst many others. But I think I want to pin my mind to what my colleague is saying, because you know I followed this a bit closely, and there was a lot of politicking. We must remember that the South African countries, you know, the SADC region had their own candidate before. They had interests. The North African countries also have their own interests. And suddenly, this was a fight amongst regional African areas. But let me speak on this quickly. You see, this notion being created that it was because Amina lost because there would have been a thought or an implication that she would have fronted an agenda on the ICC. Yes. Let me say this. You know, in the first place, can we be clear that holding that position as chair of the AU Commission has absolutely no influence? I'll tell you why. When the agenda to withdraw the country was fronted again, last time in Addis Ababa, you remember that all countries had to converge and vote on that particular agenda. It is not a decision of the chair. The outcome... You must appreciate the fact that... The outcome, Debal, of the last vote was absolutely not influenced by the chair. Right. Now, if we say... Yes. If we say that as Senator Halole is saying, that the gods were unhappy because we had this, we had that, and so be it if it is your gods. But you're not telling us that the candidate who won from Chad do not have problems, so Chad does not have problems. They have their own issues. But you have to appreciate the fact that Amina was also smacked up in the middle. Chad could have more problems than Kenya. You must appreciate right now. You must appreciate the fact that also Amina Mohamed was smacked up in the middle of trying to, you know, engineer all these happenings with the AU and the ICC as well. I mean, you know, remember, so she's the CS Foreign Affairs. Yes, and the fact that now she becomes the AU chair, maybe we send down shivers down the spine of African leaders as well. What might we be able to do with her being chair? She had the best credentials.
Kenya is not the only country with issues with ICC. Let's not forget this. In fact, if you remember, the Sudanese issues were there long before the Kenya issues were there. And therefore, the fact that Amina was the foreign secretary when all these things were happening in the AU has really very little to do. But in fact, if anything, the Bari, it raised her profile because most of the African countries actually supported her position vis-a-vis the ICC. Yeah. All right, we need to close up on it. We go to other issues as well.
I want to laud Senator Mtai for actually telling Kenyans the truth that geopolitical forces to an extent are to blame for Amina's loss of the job. And let me just emphasize the issue of political. The most current political issue now is democratization in Africa. Look at what was happening at this time in the western part of Africa vis-a-vis the eastern part of Africa. In the western part of Africa, you have Gambia embracing democracy, Ghana embracing democracy, Nigeria embracing democracy. Compare with East Africa. You go to Burundi, Nkurunziza, he has changed his constitution to become a life president. In Kigali, President Kagame is on the same route. In Uganda, Museveni on the same route. In Kenya, they're just falling short of an attempt to change the constitution to make it that the president is a life president, as evidenced. Even you don't believe that. As evidenced. Even you don't believe that. Mutai, can I? As evidenced by the attempt to use Parliament to ram down the throats of Kenyans, unpopular laws. Changing the constitution is an unpopular law. Given an opportunity, Jubilee would attempt that. So it was only fair. It was only fair that. Is that the law you're talking about? Can I? You'll respond. It was only fair that the chairship moves towards the West, where democratization of Africa is being impressed. Thank you very much. To set an example for the rest of Africa.
One of the skills I give you is the ability to actually say something you don't believe with a stone face.
When I said, other than dividing Africa into English-speaking and French-speaking, that is Anglophone and Francophone, there is also another division. A division of those who are progressive in thinking and in action, as evidenced in what West African countries did to ensure that Jammeh left Gambia and the new president was sworn in and took office, and what the other part of Africa is doing, still struggling with the old politics of people remaining in power like forever. You see, so that side is where we seem to fall, the side that is resisting change. And I think we must do everything possible to get out of that side.
All right, we need to take a short break right now, and of course we'll delve deeper into party politics as well.
Halwale should have told us about democracy in those North African countries. Democracy in Chad. Tell us about democracy in my friend. Tell us about democracy in Morocco. Tell us about democracy, my friend. In those countries, what democracy are you talking about?
All right.
Those are seriously dictatorial countries, man.
Okay.